Hello, welcome to VLGA Connect, brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. I'm Chris Eddy, and each week right here we bring you the latest news, interviews and discussions on issues of importance and interest to the local government sector in Victoria. Coming up today, the mayors of Indigo Shire and Wodonga City Councils, Sophie Price and Michael Goebel, they're here for a discussion on where things stand in the fight for a new hospital development for the Albury Wodonga region after the recent rally to Parliament in Melbourne. And Tony Raunic is back today to look into that startling document leak affecting Hepburn Shire Council. It's raised a lot of questions, but will there be answers? Tony also looks at the model governance rules, which are currently out for sector feedback. That's all ahead on VLGA Connect today. But first, let's update you on some of the latest local government happenings in Connect News. E-scooter operators Lime and Neuron are pulling out of the city of Yarra after the council increased the daily per scooter fees from $1 to $5. The operators say the increase is totally unsustainable and their combined fleet of e-scooters will be gone by early April. The council says it's disappointed in the decision, but says that it will not continue to subsidise the services from ratepayers' money. Hepburn Shire Mayor Don Henderson insists the council's proposed 10% rate increase is not linked to the controversial failed Rex Theatre development project. That's according to a report from the Ballarat Courier. The council is seeking to increase rates by 7% above the rate cap, despite recording a $5.65 million loss on the failed Rex Community Hub project in Daylesford. A leaked local government inspectorate report revealed the council purchased the Rex building in 2016 without an independent valuation and at $1.6 million above its previous sale price. More on that story when Tony Raunic joins us later in today's program. There are concerns in Rutherglen about the disposal of biosecurity waste by Agriculture Victoria related to an aviation influenza outbreak in Euroa. Indigo Shire Mayor Sophie Price said the council had been seeking answers to a range of questions in response to concern and anxiety in the community. It's published Agriculture Victoria's responses about the type of contaminated waste being disposed of and why it's being transported to Rutherglen. Casey Council has hit pause on its controversial local law, announcing a comprehensive review following community backlash. There was a unanimous vote at last week's council meeting to suspend permit fees while the impact on residents is examined. The mayors of Moonee Valley and Brimbank have hailed the signing of a memorandum of understanding between Melbourne Airport and state and federal governments to deliver airport rail. Both councils are calling for construction to commence without delay, with Brimbank especially keen to see the rail link delivered before the third runway at the airport. A coalition of metropolitan and regional councils is calling on Environment Minister Steve Dimopoulos to review the July 2027 deadline for implementing separate glass recycling bins. More than 30 councils are behind the push. They say the program will cost councils around $4 million to implement and argue that expanding the existing container deposit scheme to include wine and spirit bottles could achieve similar environmental benefits at a fraction of the cost. Hume, Darebin and Marybeck councils have collaborated on a new anti-racism support booklet, providing information about protection, reporting options and support services. And Horsham Rural City Council is seeking community feedback on whether to permanently remove or reinstate parking meters in the city centre following their temporary suspension last December. The city of Greater Bendigo is Australia's first UNESCO Creative City and Region of Gastronomy and is seeking expressions of interest from experienced event organisers to develop and deliver a major annual gastronomy festival launching in 2026. And Moonee Valley City Council has been recognised as one of Australia's top workplaces for women by Work 180 for the third consecutive year. It's the only local government organisation in the top 101. And that's the latest from Connect News for this week. On with VLGA Connect, brought to you by Hunt and Hunt Lawyers. Coming up soon, Tony Raunic, but up next, Sophie Price and Michael Goebel, the mayors of Indigo and Wodonga. Well, you might have been following a big issue up in the northeast over some months now where a number of communities, in fact, pretty much all of those communities, both south and north of the border, have banded together to say they want a new hospital, that it's needed for healthcare reasons across that region. The New South Wales and Victorian state governments have committed to rebuilding the Albury Hospital. This is a fight that's been going on for a while, and I sense it might be going on for a little bit longer. And we're going to find out where we're at with Indigo Shire Mayor Sophie Price joining me today. Nice to have you back on the show, Sophie. How are you?
Great. Thank you, Chris. Nice to join you.
Good to see you. And with you there is Michael Goebel, the Mayor of Wodonga. First-time visitor, hopefully not the last time. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
So just set the scene for us. This has been going on for some time, hasn't it?
I've been following this issue as the Mayor of Indigo for my time for the last 2 years. Right since the announcement of the $558 million, our region has been grappling with what that means. We were really clear on the direction that we were headed with Albury Wodonga Health, which was consistent with their 2021 clinical services plan. We were headed for a new single-site hospital until that funding came about. And since then, we've been trying to advocate for that original plan, the state government's own plan for a single-site hospital, which they've now redeveloped into what's currently planned, which is a brownfield site. The collaboration has grown enormously in that time, and it is at its strongest point now.
How many councils? I want to say 17, but I'm not sure where I'm getting that number from. Is it something like that?
The actual number is about 13 councils.
13, right.
Chris, yeah.
Yeah. So given that everyone in the northeast communities are of one mind about this issue, it seems that the state governments are also of one mind in that they've moved away from the single site plan. Why do you think they've done that?
I think they're still for the single site plan, but the timeframes to get there are a lot longer and subject to additional funding coming forward over time.
Right.
Where this community is not aligned with the two state governments is that what's been proposed is significantly deficient in terms of what was originally planned in that clinical service plan 2021. It's very, very clear for that $558 million that has been put on the table that there's a marginal benefit in that. And it won't give us the single site care that has been advocated for in the first instance.
Yeah, so we're talking here, not to put too fine a point on it, is the difference between a redevelopment of the current hospital and a new hospital for the region. Is that right?
Absolutely. I think that I'm framing it like this to my council and my councillors. When we do our planning at local government level, we need to have strategic justification that we put to the state government. That was their clinical services plan of 2021. Then the election promise did not match up to that, and we've been working backwards since then. So it's really clear when we speak to our health professionals and to all the councils that are on board to say, what would the solution be? It's their original plan. It's the plan, the 2021 clinical services plan that was done in consultation with all of the appropriate authorities, all of the doctors, all of the health professionals. And that's exactly what we should be hoping for. We can't plan for our future with the brownfield site that, as Mayor Goebel has said, delivers very marginal benefit to our region.
And Chris, the other point here is that it's not just a single site hospital that we're advocating for. It's a new hospital on a new site. And that recognises the fact that the current Albury campus hospital, that site is deficient in terms of being a future-proof site for the needs of this 300,000 size community in the future.
So I know you've been trying to get the government to see it your way. Sophie, I heard recently that you'd written to the Victorian Health Minister and it was some months before you got a response, and that response was somewhat wanting.
Oh, absolutely. We've been really disappointed. It seems like a complete disregard for Northeast Victoria in terms of the communication. We've been trying to advocate to the Victorian government really collaboratively. We want to work with them. We want to discuss exactly what we think the deficiencies are. They will not meet with us. They've met with the mayors of Albury and Wodonga, but they won't meet with the people who are really well affected by this issue, which is lots of the surrounding councils. To that end, there was a tri-council meeting, the first within the new Local Government Act between Alpine, Towong and Indigo. We had that in August last year, where we came together to advocate for new single-site hospital for Albury Wodonga. We wrote to the Minister for Health and to the Premier at that time, and we only received a response to that letter the week before the rally, which of course seems really coincidental that we would be planning such advocacy and only receive the response in that time. Now, that took a lot of organising to arrange for those three councils to come together, and it is a really important issue, and that's exactly why we did it. To be not responded to for 6 months, which is well into a new council term, is just really disheartening, and that's why we felt the need to have that community rally on the steps of Parliament.
Well, likewise, Wodonga City Council's been requesting meetings in written form and verbal form to the Minister for Health. In fact, there's correspondence dating back to July 2024 with effectively radio silence. And it wasn't really until which time there was a suggestion of a rally on Parliament that we actually got an acceptance of a meeting with the Minister, but it was, as Mayor Price said, it was limited to the mayors of Albury and Wodonga, and it was a Teams meeting online. The request was face to face. And to Mayor Price's point, you know, this advocacy is not just Albury, it's not just Wodonga. It's a broad region. It's a catchment of 300,000 involving 13 municipalities. And some of those regional local governments, their communities are more impacted on this issue than both Albury and Wodonga.
So that meeting's been held, Michael, the Teams meeting?
The meeting was held a number of weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, and subsequent to the outcome of that, which was not encouraging, which was just more, we're going to build we're going to do a rebuild of the Albury Hospital, and there'll be a sod turning this year, and you're all invited.
Right. So across the border, are they getting any further in their advocacy with the New South Wales government than you've been getting here in Victoria? Do you know?
So there's been a request to meet Minister Ryan Park, who's the Minister for Health in New South Wales. That request was for the mayors of the region, of the 13 councils, also including Better Border Health and the Border Medical Association, to attend that meeting. The response was very similar to that which we got from Minister Thomas, which was, we'll meet with you, but it will be the mayors of Albury and Wodonga. And we've gone back with a request, no, we want it to be broader than just the two mayors of Albury and Wodonga. The difference is, though, that minister has actually agreed to a face-to-face meeting.
So tell me about the rally. It happened as we record this a week or so ago. It made headlines because there were some outbursts in the gallery and Parliament got shut down for a time. You were there. Does the reporting of this match what happened from your perspective?
I think a couple of things, Chris. We had 230 people from our community who dedicated a day to do effectively an 8-hour round trip from Albury Wodonga region down to the steps of Spring Street. That rally was incredible. It was positive. It was a very, very strong support, as evidenced by the amount of people that turned up for that, and to hear the speakers that spoke on very, very personal issues, how the deficiency of Albury Wodonga health infrastructure is impacting healthcare in the region. We were invited into the chamber post the rally to hear a question, very pertinent question from the member from for Benambra to the health minister. And as you mentioned, there were some people in the gallery who disagreed and took offence to the minister's response to the question. So
do you think that what occurred there with Parliament being stopped while the gallery was cleared, has that damaged the cause in any way, Sophie?
Chris, I'd say to you that the context for this for Indigo is that we would like to meet with the health minister and we have been declined. We would like to meet individually as Indigo. We'd like to meet as 3 councils, as put by that motion at the Tri-Council meeting with Alpine, Towong and Wodonga. We've been declined at both stages along the way. So we work collectively with this alliance of 13 councils. And again, we're still left out of that meeting with the minister. That doesn't happen to local government mayors and deputy mayors. Normally, you are able to conduct these conversations, collaborative conversations with the ministers of the state government. Because that hasn't happened, that left us with no choice but to have a peaceful march on Parliament. And that's exactly what transpired. The fact that the minister was able to give such an answer to a question with us in the gallery to say that there is no other plan, there aren't sites available, that evoked a really emotive response to people from our community, because we are actively working on those solutions here. We just want to have a constructive conversation with the ministers to say this plan won't work for Albury Wodonga Health. Normally, if you can bring really constructive evidence to say that, then most people will listen to that conversation. At this point, we're not being listened to, and so that's the only avenue left for us.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think they won't give you the opportunity to put those solutions forward?
I think that the scope of this proposal for the redevelopment is sort of a bit of a case of reverse engineering, in that the scope's matching a sort of predetermined budget. It is pretty clear that a greenfields development would cost more money. We keep on hearing that the Victorian government is not flush with funds.
Yeah.
But we say this is not about money. This is about political will. There's a significant inequity of what Albury Wodonga Health's getting in terms of government funding when we compare ourselves to regional peers, healthcare service systems, where on any measure, Chris, whether it's beds, ICU, theatres, we've got less of those things per capita than our regional peers, and that's even assuming this $558 million redevelopment goes ahead.
Your communities are of one mind with you on this issue. Are you getting support from within the communities for this position?
The community's been outstanding in its support. Whether you look at social media, the media agencies themselves, the community is absolutely behind our collective council advocacy, the 13 councils, just saying, absolutely go for it. This, our community is saying to us, this is the #1 issue for them. This is not really, while councils are advocating on behalf of our community, we're responding to that community outcry regarding the inequity of what we're getting in terms of healthcare services in the Albury Wodonga region.
Can I just say, this push began with the community. There was a community organisation that began out of this fight, Better Border Health. And so really we are taking our lead from the community, and that's what we've done for the last 2 years. And it's been further informed by the most recent local government elections, both state and both Victorian and New South Wales here, where Albury Council was predominantly elected on the platform of a greenfield site hospital. And similarly, it was a really important focal point for the Wodonga Council elections. Now we have federal candidates who are beginning to start their campaigns, reflecting back to us that it's the single biggest issue that they're hearing about as well. So this issue is owned by the community, and that's the reason that we're advocating really. That's why we're able to reflect the fact that 13 councils working collaboratively just does reflect the community. And if the state government won't recognise that, well, I'm not sure what more we can do to bring that to their attention.
That was going to be my question, and you've raised an interesting point there with the federal election not far away. Is it helpful if this becomes a federal issue in your electorates?
Absolutely. We think there's a unique opportunity here. Albury Wodonga Health is the only cross-border health service in the country. We argue that there's absolutely a precedent for the federal government to step in and help resolve this issue. People say, well, the federal government doesn't fund bricks and mortar hospitals. Well, that's not true. There's at least 4 precedents for that. One in Tasmania, Bega Hospital, Shell Harbour Hospital, are just three or four examples of that, where substantial funds have been contributed by the federal government to support the construction of new hospitals or redevelopment of hospitals.
So given you've tried the rally, you still haven't had the meeting with the minister. We've talked about the opportunity that a federal election brings. What else is there that you think you can try to shift the needle on this?
Can I say, Chris, when I was excluded from the meeting with the Victorian Minister for Health, I said to Mayor Goebel that a question that I'd like asked on my behalf to Minister Thomas is what would stop this project? We think that we've got a really convincing argument as to why this will be so deficient and will really provide a poor outcome. And we're given a really clear answer on that, and that is nothing. And so the question that is put to us constantly is, well, why don't you stop? Clearly, it's not going to come to any effect. There's not going to, perhaps you need to look to compromise. No, absolutely not. We shouldn't settle for something that is going to negatively affect our community. Our community won't accept that. Our medical professionals won't accept that. And so we've continued to build the momentum, and that is absolutely what the community is asking us for.
In addition to that, we've got 206 doctors at the coalface in our community that have written letters to the two premiers and the Prime Minister requesting a new hospital on a new site, knowing that this revised clinical service plan the two Department of Health have come up with are going to be grossly deficient. The modelling that the Minister's relying on from her Department of Health, relies on quite tapping into latent capacity in smaller regional hospitals for beds and also virtual healthcare. And, we would argue that those assumptions that underlying this model are highly dubious, particularly in a regional context.
This is some of the best collaboration that we've seen in Northeast Victoria and including Southern New South Wales. But this is going to become commonplace for us now in Victoria. We are having to work collaboratively in our efforts with the Emergency Services and Volunteer Fund, as led by Mayor Raby from Mansfield Shire. And similarly with the waste charges that were announced on Christmas Eve, we're getting used to this level of regional advocacy, and we'll be relying on it more and more. And the state government should come to expect that.
And if I could just add to Mayor Price's comments, this region has got a great track record when we are all singing from the same hymn sheet of achieving extraordinary outcomes. So a really good example is the Hume Rail Alliance of councils that was established a number of years ago, advocating for an upgrade to the Melbourne to Albury railway line passenger, which involved a significant investment from state and federal governments in both the rolling stock and the actual track itself. So there's a really good example of where we're all singing from the same hymn sheet as a combined group, achieving some really big outcomes.
Very important that councils do come together on these issues, and we're seeing a lot of that around the state at the moment, which is great to see, with some good results that are happening as well. Thank you both for your time. All the best to you as this issue plays out. Hopefully we'll hear some good news from you very soon.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Always a pleasure to have Tony Raunic from Hunt and Hunt Lawyers joining us on VLGA Connect, and never a shortage of things to talk about. Tony, how are you doing?
Really good, Chris. Really, really good. And as you say, the stories keep coming, and some big ones this week again.
There have been, and we want to talk briefly before we wrap up about the model governance rules which are out there. I'll get your thoughts on that. But let's look at this Hepburn Shire Council leaked document. Can we call it a scandal? The document's not meant to be out there, but it is. It's been circulated on social media. And of course, a lot of questions are being asked about this as to particularly what happens next, Tony.
Yeah, so this is a report that hasn't been publicly released, a report auspiced by the local government inspectorate into failures of governance practices at Hepburn Shire Council associated with the purchase, the proposed overhaul, and ultimately the sale at a significant financial loss of the Rex building in Daylesford. And if people, viewers aren't aware, perhaps not so familiar with Daylesford, it's an Art Deco style shopping, or was an Art Deco style shopping arcade on Vincent Street, the main street of Daylesford, and really across the road from the existing historic town hall. and it was purchased by council with an intention to be converted into a community facility, including a library and council offices, and ultimately was sold by council at a substantial financial loss. $5.65 million is the reported loss according to the council website. So the local government inspectorate have refused to publicly release the report. They've restated that as their position recently. And the state government spokesperson has been reported as saying that, the LGI are an independent agency. It's not the state government's position to be directing LGI on whether they publish this report or not. But as you say...
Tony, we probably should just go back a step, provide a bit of the history here. So the actions we're talking about here with the purchase of the building, etc., they're dating back to 2018, 2019, something like that. In fact, I think work stopped on the building around 2019 and a complaint had been made to the inspectorate then. So my question to you is, it's a bit unusual, isn't it, for this to have come out now 6 years after that original complaint was made?
Yeah, it is. Well, firstly, there's been a long delay in the finalisation of the report. I think a draft form of report was released to at least the council themselves in mid 22, but they were under obligation to keep that confidential. So one question is, why has it taken so many years to finalise that report, and then ultimately, why hasn't the report been publicly released?
Yeah, and questioning the status and the versioning of this report as well, because I believe I read in the council statement, but this leaked report is not one that they've seen. They'd seen an earlier version, I think, back in 2021.
Yeah, and so the council themselves have issued a statement calling for the report's public release, saying, look, we've been calling for release of this report at council for years now in order to bring some closure for the local community, but council are concerned at the way a confidential report has been made public, and they've written to the LGI to request a thorough review of that situation. Should say that I think it's important to say council, Hepburn Shire Council have made some really significant changes in recent years to governance practices at that council, and they've released a really comprehensive, I think, report that sets out what they believe is, recommendations coming out of that investigation and their actions, including a comprehensive disposal and acquisition of land policy, and creating a major projects unit. And one of the criticisms I gather that's come out through that report process was that councillors at the time weren't as informed or across some of these major asset decisions. And now at Hepburn Shire Council, councillors are provided with a briefing once a week on major projects. So comprehensive list of actions and responses by Hepburn Shire Council, but we've seen across the sector organisations and individuals calling for public release. The MAV, through its president Jennifer Anderson, has said that in the interest of transparency and good governance, that report ought be released. And certainly at a local level, in the community at Hepburn Shire, there's been a number of people calling for release. I see that in the Age article recently, the Dalesford Cinema Group president has said, it's really disappointing that the report hasn't been released. She felt that the Hepburn community had lost out badly and had a right to know about the investigation's outcome. That was Jules McDonald. And, I can understand the angst. I think that the LGI have said that, they said in September 2024 that the inspectorate had determined there was insufficient evidence to prove the requisite standard of proof for the commission of any disciplinary breaches of or criminal offences contrary to the Local Government Act, and that the council had taken appropriate remedial action to avoid similar future complaints. So accordingly, LGI will not be releasing any report.
Yeah.
But to me, I don't think that that's a good outcome. I don't see that as consistent with the approach taken, say, by IBAC in relation to various councils in the past, or say in relation to, say, the Commission of Inquiry in relation to Moira Council. We've seen reports released regardless of whether individuals were named adversely or not. And I think that, you know, the public ought to be able to read some answers to some key questions, which presumably are addressed in the report, such as, you know, what was the due diligence undertaken by the council as to the market price? What was the true, you know, market price of the land when it was purchased by council? Who at council ultimately made those decisions to commit council to this expenditure? And what oversight did the Audit and Risk Committee have the council laws exercise? And that's, I guess, in the context of, we know that Hepburn's recently sought a 10% rate rise from the ESC. To be fair, the Mayor has come out, Don Henderson's come out and said, look, we'd be seeking this rate rise regardless of whether the losses associated with the Rex saga occurred or not. But, you know, 5.65 million is a significant amount of money that no doubt, you know, has had a big impact on council's finances. You know, there are other questions in the community. Why did council's interest pivot towards this particular site when there was strong community support apparently for the Dalesford Town Hall to be the community hub site? So, you know, and why, you know, what are the reasons for all these cost overruns, scope changes, scope creep that led to the ultimate abandonment of the project in 2021 after, as you say, 8 years and those millions of dollars of expenditure?
Yeah. So lots of questions we don't have answers to. You can understand the frustration and the anger that's been described by some in the Hepburn community as a result of this. They've been waiting for answers for quite some time. They've sort of got some with the release of this report. But my question, Tony, is what status does this have? Unless the inspectorate puts its stamp on it, we've got to question its
authenticity,
authenticity.
don't we? Absolutely. And even, you know, and even I feel a bit uncomfortable. You know, I'm not quoting from it directly because, you know, it hasn't been, the authors haven't determined to release the report. But I do think that there's clearly a desire in that across the sector in the local community for some answers.
All right, let's wait and see if there are any further developments on that. Thank you for that analysis, Tony. While we've got you, the model governance rules, I know the sector's been waiting on these. They've been put out there by Local Government Victoria. I think the clock is ticking on the feedback period, but there's a few days left for people to have their say.
That's right. So on the 20th of March, the Executive Director of LGV wrote to Victorian Council CEOs indicating that they're seeking sector feedback through a survey, Chris. And this is a survey for councillors, members of council staff and members of delegated committees. So it's not, you know, for council submissions. We're told that that will come later on.
Right.
But the survey is asking for commentary about model governance rules that were co-designed with the sector in 2020 and asking, you know, survey respondents what improvements they'd like to make to those draft model rules. And that survey is open for responses until Tuesday, the 8th of April. It's done online. It's relatively short, Chris, and, you know, urge, you know, councillors, members of council staff, members of delegated committees to go in there and provide their feedback.
Tony, the upshot of this will be a document that will be recommended that all councils apply. Will it be mandatory?
This is, you know, I can say I'm not really sure of the answer to this, Chris.
Oh.
I read the preamble in the survey, and it firstly refers to the IBAC recommendations that came out of Operation Sandon, which of course talked about minimum standards for council meetings through model governance rules, suggesting a mandatory nature.
Yes.
But then the preamble talks about IBAC's intention for these to be released as ministerial good practice guidelines, which suggests something not mandatory. So I think it'd be good to get some clarification from LGV here. The changes themselves, or the model governance rules themselves, Chris, evolutionary, not revolutionary. But I thought I'd point out something that struck me was the rules provide not just for council question time, public question time, but they also provide for this open forum item at council meetings where members of the public get to address council for a maximum 5 minutes allotted to each person, no provision for extensions and no debate. But to me, this isn't something that's currently a practice in many councils. I know, Swan Hill have this open forum practice. I'm aware that other councils do, but it seems to be, following this drive for more transparency, more, public involvement in council meetings.
It is a bit of a change for many. I noticed, I think it's Willoughby in New South Wales has just done something similar that apparently has gone very well, and they're further refining. So I think it's sort of over in that column with open briefings as the new transparent approach that many are calling for.
Yeah, well, that's right, and I can see it being challenging for councils when there are controversial things afoot, and can be a difficult setting, but certainly continuing down that path. Interestingly, divisions continue, Chris,
Right.
unlike what IBAC suggested. There's no automatic minuting of how councillors vote on resolutions, but there's this ability to call for a division. I think things are on notices of rescission. I found that really interesting, that there's a helpful guide in the model rules about when a rescission's to be considered to have been acted upon. So things like that I think are quite helpful and useful. And I think certainly my view is these model governance rules are a step forward, but let's get some clarity on are they mandatory or not. And by all means,
So tell me, there's always been a bit of controversy around that rescission motion issue and when you can consider it's been acted on, and often the legal answer has it been formally communicated to the impacted parties? Is that part of the definition still?
It is, Chris. You've picked it. I mean, you can't seek to rescind a motion where the content or the substance has been formally communicated to a person whose interests are materially affected by it, including simply by publishing the proposed minutes of meeting on council's website.
Right.
But or if some statutory process has commenced to vest rights. So, but I think that's very helpful for governance officers who need to understand this. And there's also some clarification on the fact that if there's a resolution to change council policy, that's not a notice of rescission. You can do that without following the notice of rescission process.
Right. Okay. That sounds like it'll be very helpful and perhaps clear up a few things. And the complex area of conflicts of interest, I think, is covered there as well, isn't it?
It is, Chris. And interestingly, there's this clarification, I think, that you and I always thought was appropriate, was that councillors who declare a conflict can't participate in discussion of matters that are, relevant to that decision that they have a conflict. If I can call that the Jeff Ablett rule, in that Jeff Ablett was called out in the IBAC Sandon report in relation to that. But in relation to staff, council staff, they are entitled to continue to, provide advice to a decision maker on a matter where they've declared a conflict of interest, provided they comply with the, relevant local policies for staff. So a different treatment there.
A bit to unpack there, and as you say, the survey is open to those who've been targeted with that survey. They would have the details, and they have until the 8th of April to get their thoughts in.
That's right, Chris.
Tony, thank you for all of that work you've done to prepare those two topics for us this week. Much appreciated as always. I'm sure we'll be talking about something equally meaty very soon.
Good stuff, Chris.
Tony Raunic from Hunt and Hunt Lawyers joining us today on VLGA Connect. That wraps up another edition of VLGA Connect. We've covered a lot of ground as usual. I hope you've enjoyed the program. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube and on your podcast player. We'll look forward to being back with you for more VLGA Connect next week. Bye for now.